Howdy, Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show begins to tell you a little bit about the Texas Wine Lover website and app. It is a definite must-have for anyone wanting to explore the Texas wine industry. Now, they have a website. It's txwinelover.com, but they also have an app that you can actually download to your phone. You can find it on the Apple App Store or on the Google Play Store for Android devices. And it's going to be kind of your one-stop shop for when you go out to visit these great places. So you get to listen to them here on the podcast or watch them on YouTube to learn about these wineries. But when you go to visit, make sure you're checking out that app, because I'm sure you're probably going to want to visit other places in the area as well. And you can do incredible searches. It's the most comprehensive listing of winery information in Texas. And you can look for wineries in your area to go visit multiple places. You can sort those listings by finding out ones that are kid-friendly, maybe some that are pet-friendly. If you want to look for events or things that are going on, if you want to find those that can host RVs, just about any category you can think of, you can actually sort those listings and find wineries around you to go visit. The app is free to use for you and I. So it's a perfect, again, hand-in-hand tool when you're going out to visit wineries. Listen to them on this podcast, watch them on YouTube, and then start making your plans to go visit and use the Texas Wine Lover app when you go. Now, it can also be a great tool. Maybe you're not even looking for a winery. You just happen to be traveling to some place in Texas, and you just might think, I've got a little extra time. I wonder if there are any wineries in the area. You can actually look them up in the Texas Wine Lover app. You can search either by the name of a winery, or it's got a map view. So you can actually pull up a map of the area around you and see locations of wineries near you and go visit them and support the Texas wine industry. So you got to use the Texas Wine Lover app. It goes perfectly with this podcast. So make sure you check it out before you go on your next trip among the vines. Again, it's www.txwinelover.com, or look up the Texas Wine Lover app on your favorite phone app store and make sure you get that downloaded and use it frequently. You will benefit from it, and ask for Texas wines. Let's see the Texas wine industry prosper and go visit some of these fun places that I'm bringing to you on the show. Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper. Welcome to episode 58 for the Texas Under Vine podcast. And for this episode, I stayed again in the Central Texas area, but this time I wandered a little bit less far off the beaten path here to the I-35 corridor in between Austin and San Antonio, to the little but thriving town of New Braunfels. And there in New Braunfels, I was able to find my way to a little place called Dry Comal Creek Vineyards, right there in New Braunfels. And it was this little space of beautiful country right there next to the bustling city of New Braunfels, not far at all from, of course, San Antonio and from Austin. So very convenient little place to go out, but feels like you're kind of in the hill country area. You're kind of out in the countryside, beautiful oaks all around the property, really fun little place that I got to visit. And I was able to sit down with their general manager, Sheila Laigle, to talk a little bit about their storied past, their current present of their wines they're offering now, as well as their hopes for the future and what they would like to see happen there at Dry Comal Creek Vineyards as time progresses. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the winery and the vineyard there itself. So, the vineyard itself that was planted on the property there was actually started back in 1998 by a fellow named Franklin Hauser, and it was kind of a getaway property for he and his family to get out and enjoy the countryside a little bit, have a little respite from the craziness of the city. And he actually planted the vines as kind of a hobby, had some fun with those. In the 1990s, began producing some wine from those vines. And he actually was using both Texas as well as other places. So he would get some California grapes and things like that. It's from other locations. It wasn't solidly 100% Texas at the time. But around 2017, he wanted to retire from that process. And he ended up selling Dry Comal Creek Vineyards to the Romero family. Now, the Romero family were very familiar with the service industry and restaurants and things like that. They're actually in the Fort Worth area. They took over Dry Comal Creek Vineyards at that time, and they decided to turn it into definitely 100% Texas focus. So going from that point forward, 2017 on, they have solely been able to source all of their fruit from their own vineyard, as well as places like the High Plains and other hill country areas, to be able to get all of their fruit, making themselves 100% Texas with their wines. Now, although the Romeros, like I said, live in Fort Worth, the day-to-day operations are actually governed by Sheila Laigle, who's been actually with Dry Comal Creek, I think she said since 2015, so quite a while there. You'll get to hear more of her story today. But the winemaker for the vineyard for the winery, there is Seth Urbanik, and he is making all of their wines. They do kind of some custom crush with that, with William Chris and other places. So they don't have the production facilities on site just yet. That's a goal down the road for them. But Seth Urbanik is the one who's their winemaker. And Sheila, who again has been there at the winery for quite some time, runs all of the day-to-day operations, makes all the decisions, keeps the tasting room running smooth, and she's the one who I got to sit down with to interview, as I said earlier today. Interestingly, the original owner and vineyard planter, Franklin Hauser, that I mentioned a while ago, is considered by some people the father of the black Spanish grape here in Texas. It's also called Lenoir, and that particular grape varietal is an interesting grape varietal for Texas especially, because it does have resistance to Pierce's disease, which we have mentioned on this podcast before. It's definitely a troubling problem for a lot of vineyards in Texas, especially ones that are outside of the West Texas High Plains area. They don't really deal with it, but here in Central Texas, we struggle with it, and especially in the eastern parts and the southern parts of Texas, it can be very hard to work with. So it's a very sturdy, kind of hardy vine for those areas that do struggle with Pierce's disease. It's kind of been made in a lot of different ways, used a lot of times by a lot of wineries as a port type of wine. But that's what they actually have planted on site there at Dry Comal Creek Vineyards. They originally had things like Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay and all these other things, but being in a dry creek bed, Dry Comal Creek, they would suffer from floods a lot of times in the vineyards, which caused a lot more disease pressure and just really had a hard time with a lot of those original varietals. So eventually, Mr. Hauser pulled all that up and just planted the Black Spanish. And that's what they have exclusively right now on their site. They have about 4 acres of Black Spanish grapes there on the vineyard property. But that's not the only wines that they provide. They do have a great palette of wines, everything from whites to rosés, reds. They have sparklings. They even have some sweet wine. So they have something to satisfy almost any palate if you're a wine drinker there. And again, they are all 100% Texas. So you'll be able to find most anything that you would like when you go to visit Dry Comal Creek. They also host some really fun live events on site with live music. They bring in food trucks. They're kind of a big, really cool event that they do pretty frequently, these happy hours and things. Some of those are members only, but some of them are open. I would check their website. You definitely want to look at their event calendar because you don't want to miss one of those hopping parties that they have there at Dry Comal Creek Vineyards as well. Now, something to take notice of before you go, they do have a policy of only 21 and over at the winery. So this isn't a place to take the kids. There are a lot of great family-oriented places there in New Braunfels where you can take the kids and have a lot of fun with them. Dry Comal Creek is not that place. So make sure that you get somebody to take care of the kids for you when you go to get a little bit of a getaway from the hustle and bustle of parenting and enjoy your adult entertainment there more without the kids around. And so, again, just keep that in mind before you go. It is 21 and over. And when you do your tastings there, you have the option of either sitting inside their seated tasting, so you can sit indoors in their tasting room if you would like, depending upon the weather, of course. But if the weather's nice outside, like we do get a lot of the year here in Texas, you're more than welcome to do your tasting outside. They have, like I said earlier, some beautiful oaks on the property, a lot of great seating outside in the patio, places to go sit outside and enjoy your wine and do your tasting outside in the beautiful Texas weather as well. It's kind of up to you what you'd rather choose, and of course, depending upon what Texas is giving us on that particular day. And as I said, I was able to go visit and sit down with Sheila, that I mentioned earlier, the general manager, and we got to talk all things wine and the wine industry. We got to talk a lot about Dry Comal Creek and learn a little bit about that history with Mr. Hauser and now the Romeros and where they've come, where they're going, some of their ideas for the future, as well as these great wines that are winning awards. So without further ado, let's go hear from her.
Howdy, Vine Trippers. Welcome to Dry Comal Creek Vineyards. So I'm here with Sheila Laigle, and we are here to talk about this vineyard and this winery and kind of what they have going on here. And I'm excited to bring that to you. So without further ado, Sheila, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the wine industry?
Hi there. Well, Scott, I don't know. I would say my wine journey probably started when I was a kid.
Okay.
And it would have been Easter's because that was the only time we were allowed to drink wine. And I grew up in upstate New York, and so it was usually Finger Lakes wine and usually Riesling.
Riesling.
So, but that's when it started. I went to college at Syracuse University and went for therapeutic recreation because I was going to teach everybody how to have fun.
Hey, that sounds like a great career.
And my mom and dad always said, well, you're not working in your major. Well, I kind of am in wine. So started out with that, and life evolves, careers come and go. So I ended up being a manager for a dental company. And so I was a manager for that, and I was just getting burnt out and done. And so my husband came home from work one day and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be Rachel Ray. So I went to cooking school. I quit my job and went to cooking school, jumped in with both feet. And every Friday was a great day because we did wine all day. And so that's how I ended up getting my level 1 through school. And so that was really cool through cooking school. And then I spent a couple of months overseas, and I went to France and Italy and studied there in Piedmont and in Provence. So, hello.
Right.
Hello. And the bug bit me and I got hooked. Well, I decided after cooking school, I'd work as a chef, and you make little money to none, and you're working huge hours, and it is a lot of work.
It's brutal, right?
And I was in my 40s, and I'm like, I'm not ready to work that hard. I already did this. So I thought, wine was the part I loved the most. So then I ended up going to the International Sommelier Guild in Denver, and did that and really fell in love. And I did that back in 2010.
Okay.
And fast forward, my husband got relocated his job, and we ended up in Florida. And I worked for a couple wine shops. And so that's when I jumped in with both feet and got out of dentistry for good, because I did go back a little bit because the money was good.
Oh, sure.
So started working in Naples, and I don't know if you know this, but that's where all the people from the wine industry go to vacation
Ah,
because they can write it off because they're tasting vacations usually. And so the wine shop really afforded me to meet some really great people and winemakers, and it was really cool. And I tasted some fantastic wine throughout the world, and my boss has the best palate in the world, and had a great mentor there in wine, who had studied with Kevin Zerali, and it was just really cool. And he was so not pretentious. And for Douglas to pour wine, he would do it in a decanter, which would some of these people that are our customers were, had their nose out of joint a little bit. So Douglas always was good, and that was probably the biggest lesson he told me, that everybody has their own palate, and you have to respect that. And sometimes you have to knock people down a notch because wine is for everybody. It's very social, and everybody wants to have fun with it. Everybody has a smile on their face. And it's like, okay, a smile on their face. This goes back to what I went to college for.
therapeutic recreation.
So that is wine for sure. So I ended up moving here again for my husband's job, and started working here at the winery with Sabrina and Mr. Hauser back in 2015. And 2017, new owners purchased the winery, and they asked me to come work full time. And so I've been here since. Kind of by default, I was assistant tasting room manager, and things just happened, circumstance, and I ended up being general manager.
Yeah.
So I'm really fortunate that the owners entrust me to do everything. They live in Fort Worth.
Okay.
They're first generation Mexican Americans, very proud of their American heritage, and Texas.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that Mr. Romero wanted to instill in the winery. He really wanted to bring Texas back because Texas had done so much for him. And the mother business he's done very well with. They express oil out of seeds.
Oh, wow.
And so they opened the vineyard kind of as an interest. And so he wanted to get back to Texas. So he's like, we are going 100% Texas at that time. So we've been doing that since 17. So really proud of that fact. And Mr. Hauser, that's the old owner. Mr. Romero passed away from COVID back in 21. And so his family, they're still running it. But I'm really blessed that they say, Sheila, go with it. So
you got boots on the ground.
I do. I'm able to do the labels. I work, really hand in hand with our winemaker to pick out what varietals we want. And so pretty much everything. I clean the bathroom, to do plumbing, to whatever I need to do is but glamorous. So, and so I've been here since 2015. So
Yeah, I was talking with somebody just a couple of days ago about, they were again going on with me about, the wine industry is so glamorous to work in a winery. I said, let me tell you about really what it means to work in a winery.
yeah, you don't know.
You got 10% glamour, and then the rest 90% is very unglamorous.
Absolutely. We have actually a pasture up on the hill. And we have several cows up there. So the cows are also my responsibility. Never did I think I would have a gentleman named Bubba John in my Rolodex of names. And he's our guy that comes to tend the cattle. And comes and checks them out when we have issues. So it's like, never did I think that.
So maybe I should put your title as rancher / general manager.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the next evolution.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit. You've already kind of gone into some of it, but the history of this place. How did it get started? Talk to me through its history and kind of its evolution to where we are today.
Absolutely. Mr. Hauser, Franklin Hauser, who's kind of the pioneer we know of Black Spanish here in Texas. Mr. Hauser started the winery in 1998. So we just celebrated our 25th anniversary. And he started it because his wife, Bonnie, was tired of him moping around the house. And she was really tired of Oprah on the TV. So she told him, you have got to find an interest because Oprah is getting on my nerves. And so he decided to start researching it. Of course, one of the first wines he planted, Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay.
Okay.
Thank goodness they were destroyed in 1999 with a flood.
Oh, no.
So that kind of had him, it provoked him to start looking at other varietals that would grow well here because we are a dry creek bed, so it's very susceptible to disease. And so he decided to go with Black Spanish because it has a resistance to Pierce's disease. So that's what all the vines are on property. We have right now 4 acres of Black Spanish. Mr. Hauser was a very tall man. He was well over 6'5", and he was a retired gentleman. So if you look at Vineyard 1, we call it, in front of the house, you'll notice the vines are very high.
I did see that on the way in.
And those are Black Spanish. He just pruned them very high so he could pick them for ease. The only problem is, as he got older and wasn't able to take care of them, most of the people he hired were shorter in stature.
Step ladders.
Yeah. And so he ended up planting the rest of the vineyard is lower.
Okay.
And it's actually probably a hair lower than usual because most of them were shorter. So interesting because people are like, why are the grapes so different? No, they're all the same. So, but Mr. Hauser and his family ran the vineyard from 98 until 2015. And then Mr. Hauser decided to retire for good. He was an attorney from San Antonio, and this was their family place that they would come on the weekends to get away from the big city. So now we're all part of the city, and it's slowly coming out this way. So at that time, a lot of the grapes were from here, the Black Spanish, and he was sourcing some of them from New Mexico and some from California, of course. So, still was very deep with the Texas roots. But then fast forward, the 17 is when the Romero family took over. They came here, and as the story goes, Mr. Hauser and Ralph Romero Jr. Were up on the patio of the apartment. That's the next building over. They were on the patio, and they sealed the deal with a glass of the old sangria that we used to think.
There you go.
We used to sell. So,
how appropriate.
Yeah. So it was really nice.
Yeah.
When I started here, there were 11 wines on the tasting menu, and I think now we're about 20.
Okay.
So different varietals. So really exciting. So.
And for that, seen a nice broad selection of a lot of different things.
Nice selection.
Very popular.
Before we did a lot of sweet-oriented stuff because that was kind of the palate at that time. And now we're doing much more dry. So we are 100% celebrating Dry January by having most of our wines being dry.
There you go. I love it.
So our winemaker currently is Seth Urbanek.
Okay.
And he is amazing. Silly story, but I graduated from my degree is from Syracuse University, but actually went to a small college that had less people. But my degree is through Syracuse, but it was Utica.
Okay.
And really small. And Seth's father-in-law was my dean of students.
What?
I know. What are the chances?
Small world, right?
Small world. So really kind of cool that it comes back. And so one thing that Seth needed, just because he knew I was from upstate, and that's kind of where he cut his teeth, is in the Finger Lakes. So he's like, you have to have a Riesling. That's all there is to it. And as we know, Riesling was the wine that got me into it.
Yeah.
So really proud to have that. So.
Well, and I take it the name, you mentioned being on a dry creek bread. This is Dry Comal Creek.
Dry Comal.
And so the name is just derived from the area.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we looked at changing our name when the new people bought the vineyards, the Romero family. We decided not to because people were familiar with it. And Dry Comal Creek isn't going to change.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's always going to be here. So we might as well just use it.
Do you know if there was a reason why Mr. Hauser chose this particular location or just happened to be available?
It was his family house.
Oh, really?
That's their vacation house that they use. So he added everything else.
He just said, well, let's get away from Oprah and go play it right outside the backyard.
Absolutely. So the tasting room where we're sitting right now, this was the loading dock.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we had benches here at one time. This was open.
Yeah.
And it said that Mr. Hauser used to sit up here and shoot hogs. He'd sit here on the patio and shoot because this was a recent enclosure. The winery was actually up in the front room, and you could still see the glycol lines up there.
We
kept those, but that's where he made his wine, and he did the tasting room right out of there. Very small, very quaint.
Yeah.
So.
And we are in New Braunfels, so
we're
just kind of north northeast, I would say more north of San Antonio.
Yep.
And just a little south of Austin in San Marcos area, in New Braunfels area. So perfect, just not far off of I-35 really to get over here. So if you're headed north or south through the main corridor through Texas, very easy to make a little.
Very easy. And 281, and they're doing lots of improvements there. So it's getting
Right up
easier
towards the
access. And
wine
right off
node.
3009. So we're really a convenient location.
Well, you talked a little bit about your fruit and the Texas, all Texas. So where do you source your fruit for your
On
wine?
the High Plains and Hill
And
Country.
here, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, in here. So High Plains, several different vineyards, all the way from Del City. That's where our Riesling is coming
Way out
from.
by El Paso.
Yep, a little bit of salinity on that palate from the soil, but some up there, some Lost Straw vineyards. So pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
So I'm really excited. Our winemaker does a lot of his work out of William Chris.
Okay.
So that does make us have some vineyards that we normally wouldn't
Access
have.
to things.
So he has great relationships with those growers. So we're really blessed.
Cool. And then does he do all the wine processing out there?
Yes, he does right now. We're still in the process of updating that facility. It's very outdated. So we need to get it up to snuff. So until we have that done, we're sourcing that with Seth.
Okay. But your goal is eventually to move that production
I
here?
hope so. I
Okay.
hope so. Mhm.
Got you. Well, so what about some of the wines that you offer? We'll just ask from your perspective. What are some of your favorite wines that you offer here?
We all know wine is living and breathing, and it is wonderful, ever changing, which is so wonderful. Right now, my favorite is probably our Blanc de Noir, which is our sparkling, and it's Petit Meunier, which we know is one of the 3 champagne grapes. So that is a really cool wine, and it's done in the natural the traditional method. So that's one of my favorites. I also like the Blanc de Blanc too. And that is a Blanc de Bois, which grows considerably well here in Texas. And that is like mimosa without the orange juice.
Yeah.
It's just delicious. So those are probably my 2 favorites.
Okay.
And I love our Herbalin, which is the name of our road out here.
Oh, yeah.
And Mr. Herbalin is actually a neighbor that lives down the road.
Really?
And he is the cutest man, but he will send us a text or call us and say, "Hey, gal, I'm ready to pick up a 6-pack." And so he picks up a 6-pack of his Herbalin.
Of his own named wine.
Yeah. Mhm.
I love
So
that.
he's really cool, really neat man. And then right now, my favorite is the Mourvèdre, and I'm really proud of it because of the San Francisco gold medal we got on that.
Yeah.
So those are probably my 4 top, but
Gotcha.
I haven't tasted wine yet today, Scott. So it might be
It
more.
never does, and that's the fun thing about wine.
Yep.
And like you said, it's living and breathing. You can taste something one day, and I had somebody tell me, not to geek out too much here, but somebody tell me one time that with wine, just even the pollen that's in the air can affect your
100%.
taste buds. Your different things.
100%.
That's why you can taste a wine one day, and the next day taste it, and it tastes almost completely different.
Absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely. And everybody has a different reaction to it. Kaylee over here that's working today, she is so cute. Like she goes, "Ooh, something," and it hits her. It actually hits her nose, and she goes, "Ooh, I don't like that today."
Yeah.
So it's almost like the histamines or
Yeah.
whatever is in the air that time. It just drives her crazy. So
See.
it's so funny you said that.
Yeah. Well, what are some of your most popular wines with customers? What are the ones that you're like, hey, we can keep this on the shelf?
Tempranillo is definitely
Yeah.
a big one. Delicious. This Tempranillo is really nice too. It has a nice I almost want to say velvet vanilla on that
Ooh, yeah.
on the palate, which is
A little bit of
not
oak on
heard of.
there.
Like if somebody blind tasted that, they would never use that to describe Tempranillo. So I dig that. So that definitely standard is our Sangiovese.
Okay.
It was our first red when the Romeros took over, and it sells itself. We don't even have to say it. People really love the Sangio. Our worst red is our how do I say it is the worst wine. Everybody loves it because we have Wurst Fest here in New Braunfels, so we had to
It's
put
worst, just so for the listeners who can't see it, it's WURST.
yes, like
Play on
solid.
words, right?
And so we called it the Wurst Wine, and that has kind of been our replacement for back in the old days. Mr. Hauser had Comal Red,
Okay.
and it was a little sweeter, kind of had a little glühwein-like, if you would. But we were like, oh, we need to change it up a little. We have a different winemaker and stuff. So we kind of left the label where it looks like
Similar.
like a beer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you can see the little hat, the German
hat.
but this is a favorite, and it's user friendly. It has the screw cap, so people love it because they can drink on it a couple days. But that's probably a kind of our segue wine.
Yeah.
When people are first getting into wine, they love that, and it pairs beautifully with chocolate. It's delicious. They usually start with that, and then they move into all the others.
Is it off dry or is it?
It's sweet.
Oh, it's sweet. It's not
It's
even
a
sweet. It's not even off
sweeter
dry.
wine.
It's sweet.
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it does have some oak aging, so it doesn't seem as sweet as some of our other wines. That we only have 3 sweet wines, but it's funny. It just has a following, so gotta love it. We have to keep it.
And that's great because you have something for almost every palate.
Absolutely.
Sparkling, you have sweet, you have whites, reds, dry, you have all kinds of things to meet most anybody's palate
Absolutely.
buds here. So
For sure.
well, so those are some of the wines. Let's talk about the location itself. Do you host any kind of events or things out here for people to come?
Absolutely. We're very close to Vintage Oaks. That's our big community. Huge community. I live there myself, and it's fairly large. So this ends up being the neighborhood vineyard.
Okay.
So we do some happy hours, and we do definitely one a month, but sometimes we'll do 3, depending on how busy we are, and other private events and things like that. But we always do 1 happy hour a month that's members only. So that way we can connect with our family, and sometimes that's what we use to release wines and things like that. So it's really nice. But we have food trucks out here. We have live music. The band usually plays out in the yard. Really nice, chill place to just veg. One of our things that we did change up a little bit is we are 21 and over.
Okay.
Which it was a hard thing for some of our neighborhood people to get used to, but we really felt like we needed an adult playland. There's so many places here in New Braunfels that are family friendly. Mom and dad need a break too, because the kiddos wouldn't be there if it weren't for mom and dad.
Exactly.
So we've really embraced that.
Okay.
And our folks love it because they do have a place away from the kids, and they get to use us as an excuse, which that's okay, because it's a playland.
Yeah.
So,
when you got this beautiful, nice open area with all the beautiful
Absolutely.
oaks out here to sit down and enjoy nature and drink your wine.
100%. So we do that. We do the happy hours probably 2 to 4 times a month.
Okay.
And then we do music on Saturdays a lot of the time. Right now we're on the slow time. We'll pick that back up in March. And we do a lot of fundraising things for the community. We had Hope Hospice Christmas party out here. So we're very involved with Connections and Comal County Crisis Center. So we help with a lot of those events in the community and here as well.
Okay.
So we're really proud of that. Oh, and what is it? The Dogs Wine and Wags. We do that every year. We do a big bazaar, usually around Veterans Day. So we try to do a lot for the community.
Really injected there.
Yeah.
Main hub of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about a tasting. So let's say a listener's now getting interested. They want to come check the place out. Let's talk about what they can expect if they come in for a tasting. So what does a tasting typically look like? Do you have a set flight of wines, or do the customer pick their wines? And then how much does it cost? Do they need reservations? Things like that.
Right. With my background, I'm very much a food and wine pairer and things like that. And I like everything to go my way.
A certain order, right?
And there is a certain
That's important
order.
for your palate.
It really is important to your palate. I have been to tastings around the world where they'll go, oh, pick what you want. Well, if you pick something sweet like the Wurst Red, and then you go ahead,
It's downhill.
everything is, it just kind of blows out your palate. So I change it monthly, probably. I change the tasting menu. So we usually start with something light or something sparkling, and then we go through the whole list. That's one thing that our members really like, is we do change it up monthly. So if they come 1 month, they know in a month I can come back and get something different. So we do like to do that. But you'll come in, all our tastings are seated. And we put the menu down and just kind of go through everything with you. Okay. At times there are people that will come in and say, I only like sweet wines. So we'll even say to them, I wouldn't recommend the tasting for you.
Yeah.
This might not be, let me just
Maybe a
pour,
glass.
maybe a glass, or let me give you a sample of a
Wow.
couple to see what you might like, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
But But it's interesting when it's all about how you present it. And a lot of times people will be saying that they don't really like wine, they won't get into it. But once you start telling them the stories and they start tasting it, and the way we had the tasting kind of spaced out, by the end they're going, I think I like wine.
Well, and I would also say, for those of you that do just like sweet wines, don't be afraid to try. That's the beauty of tastings.
Absolutely.
And your palate may change, or you may find something that you would have never have known that you liked if you hadn't tried it. And so
Absolutely.
it's great to be a sweet wine drinker. I like several sweet wines myself, but be willing to try new things. And that's, again, with the tasting, you're only getting a little bit of each one. You're not sold into something. And so it might open your eyes to something that you never knew that you liked.
Absolutely. And don't feel bad about dumping that taste out. If you don't like it, you have your own palate. You be you.
Yeah.
That's okay. So we change it up quite often. And every day when we come into work, we taste through the wine. I know it's a bad thing, but we want to make sure everything's good quality for our people, and we'll make adjustments as needed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you need to do that. But our tastings are seated.
Okay.
And you have a choice to either do it on the patio or in here. So right now it's kind of chilly, so more people are opting for inside. So we go through about 5 or 6 wines and go from there.
And how much does a tasting cost?
A tasting costs $25.
Okay.
Now, if you do buy 3 bottles, we waive that tasting.
Oh, okay. There you go. If you find something you like.
Absolutely. And for our members, they can do free tastings every day if they want.
Okay.
And if they don't want to do a tasting, they're welcome to have a glass. And they can bring their friends with them.
Do first-time visitors should they make reservations?
Not a bad idea to make reservations on Saturday or Sunday, or even Fridays. We have a lot of people that come to New Braunfels as a vacation getaway, and so Fridays can fill up. And sometimes Mondays too. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Just never know, right?
Yeah, and we are actually one of the few places that are open on Mondays.
Okay.
For tastings, because we appeal to the people that are coming here for a weekend getaway.
Yeah.
Most of our holidays are on Mondays, like this.
Coming up.
Yeah. We've got that coming up, so we want to make sure that we cater to those folks. So,
well, what are your operating hours?
we open at 12 o'clock, and then our last pour is at 5:15.
Okay.
And then we lock the gate at 6 o'clock.
What days are those?
We do it Thursday through Monday.
Thursday to Monday.
So we're closed Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay. Excellent. You mentioned a moment ago 21 and up. So if you have kids, leave those at home for this particular visit. But what about pets or things like that? Do you
Pets
allow
are welcome
dogs
as long as they're well behaved.
Okay.
Yep.
And are they allowed to come inside or just outside?
Of course, canine companions and things like that.
Service animals.
The service animals, they can come in, but for the most part, everybody's outside.
Okay.
So,
do you offer any you mentioned food trucks a moment ago. Do you offer any kind of food options or things for people?
We do. We have a great food truck that does a lot of our events here.
Okay.
My Sweet Basil, and they are stationed up in Canyon Lake. That's very close, because we're very close to Canyon Lake as well. But they do potato chips for us, and they are a huge hit. They're all organic. They're delicious. They make them weekly for us. So, and they pair great with all the wine.
Yes.
And so we have those, and then we do flatbread pizzas.
Okay.
And so we cook those. And then when we do have food trucks, we don't cook our food. We allow them to make all the money.
Yeah.
So really nice. And we have pizza trucks that we work with often, barbecue trucks, sushi, you name. Of course, Cousin's Maine Lobster. So it's ever changing.
Yeah. And you immediately said pizza, and I immediately went right to the Sangiovese over there. It's
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Perfect match. What about groups? Do you have any maximum group sizes?
We do a max group of 6.
Okay.
But if you have a larger group, give us a call. We'll work on it with you. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays when we're closed, we do a lot of destination management companies. We work with them where they might have somebody that has a big seminar or a big conference in San Antonio. And because we're the closest to San Antonio, they come out and they'll spend the day with us on Tuesday, Wednesdays.
But as long as that's kind of worked through up front. Just wheel the bus, pull up into the parking lot.
No. Please give us a call. Yeah. Because we want to give you the best experience. And if we know you're coming, we can do that with you.
It's not because you hate big groups.
No.
We don't want business. Thanks anyway. No, but it's just be able to give that best
100%.
experience.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What are your busier and slower seasons? What's the best time to come visit?
Any time is good. I would say our busy season probably starts mid-March and probably goes until the heat of July.
Okay.
Then July, it slows down a little. We do have the indoor open and our air conditioning is going, so we always have space here to do that.
Yeah.
But I would say best time mid-March
Okay.
and to June. It's just gorgeous to sit, do your tasting inside or do it on the patio and enjoy that. And then go get a bottle or a glass and go sit out in the yard.
Well, and,
Nice.
and that's the beauty of having a winery in Texas, in my opinion, too, is that even here we're filming this in January, and this weekend coming up. It's supposed to be a big cold front coming through, but today it could be in the 60s, just beautiful outside here in Texas in January. So
100%.
Sometimes you can pick any month of the year and find a great beautiful day.
Absolutely. Today it's beautiful, and I'm sure we'll have some people enjoying the outdoors. So
Well, we kind of you talked about members a few minutes ago and things like that. Wine club. Do you offer a wine club? And
We
what are
do.
the details on
we
that?
do. We offer 2 different wine clubs. We do. I don't know if you noticed, we have a rooster on our the roof
Silo out there,
on the
yeah.
silo, and that was something Mr. Hauser did many years ago. He saw those in churches over in Europe, and he thought that would be really cool to be here. So it's been kind of our mascot, if you will. So of course we named our wine club after roosters. So Silky is a starter rooster. So that's our six bottle
Yeah.
club, and then the big one, a big rooster, just like bulls, is a Brahma. So Brahma is our case club. So we keep it kind of simple. So 2 times a year we do the spring and the fall, 6 bottles or 12, and then the Brahma also gets another case in June,
Oh,
and we do a party just for those
Yeah.
people. The Silkies get a 15% off all their purchases. Brahmas get 25% off. So our wine club, they are our family.
yeah.
So really love having them.
Can people sign up online, or do they have to come into the
They,
winery?
they can sign up online at the winery.
Perfect.
Let your person that's serving you know, and they'll definitely give you the information on it.
Okay. What about if distribution? If somebody can't get here by any stretch, do you sell online on your website, or do you do distribution of any kind so people can taste your wines without having to come to this location?
Absolutely. We of course can ship anywhere in Texas, and we're working on being able to ship to other states. So that's in progress. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in the next couple months. As far as places in the community that sell our wines, we're not in any stores. We don't do distribution. We do sell at a couple local restaurants. One being Oak Valley Vineyards, that's on 3009. And we do have some wine over at the Grapevine in Green, and that's all that's carrying our wine right now.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
Yeah.
We kind of already talked just a little bit about the wine production facility and all that, but do you have plans for future growth? What do you see for the future?
I hope so. I would like to see our wine being made here on site for sure. It's very important. I love working with Seth, but he also works for other people as well. So I think it's really important to have the winemaker here so we can hear the stories through him too.
Yeah.
I can tell him the best I can, and I can teach my staff how to do that, and they're great stories. But sometimes we have to enter our own stories into it just to make it a little more interesting. So I definitely would like winemaking here a little more. I would also like to venture. We have not ventured into other varietals.
Okay.
Our vines here are 25 plus years old now, and so I'd really like to get some different varietals in, like Blanc de Bois. I would love to try. I know there's a winery not far from here that is doing pick pull, and we just got back from symposium, and I am a huge fan of pick pull right now, and so I would love to see if we could get some pick pull here.
It's
So
probably my favorite wine.
oh my goodness, it's heavenly, and would love to check that out. And so that would be my personal plan.
Okay.
And maybe down the road, just do some updatings on facilities. I would love to be able to offer more food options because that's kind of my background. So would love to have a full kitchen and things like that down the road. So we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see.
I love that. Well, there are a lot of places in Texas that people can go to drink wine and visit, Dry Comal Creek being one of those.
Yeah.
So what do you think would you say in your opinion, is the number one thing that really draws people in? What would you say that my listeners would say, I have to go visit there because of this?
I would say probably our people, our staff are amazing. They're very well educated. They know their wine. There is not a snobby bone in any of my staff's bodies. They're just so down to earth. Everybody comes for us. I would say that's number one. Probably three things I would say. So the people for sure. Number two, proximity to San Antonio, the airport, and New Braunfels. New Braunfels is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, and we're right here in town. And you can kind of save all the traffic and everything of the 290 and have a lot of the same grapes that you get up there, and you can have it right here. And you can actually grab a bottle afterwards and sit in the yard and totally relax. And I would say that would be our biggest theme, is just being able to come out here, get away from the city, the busy roads, and relax in the country. And you're looking at a vineyard, a dry creek bed under the beautiful oaks. And New Braunfels has some of the best music around, and a lot of times we bring that to the winery too. So why not have that experience out there?
So Sheila mentioned their staff. She mentioned the proximity there to San Antonio, as well as I'd say Austin as well. And then the beautiful escape that you get to feel like you're in the country right there in the middle of the city. And all three of those are incredibly valid reasons to go check out Dry Comal Creek Vineyards. But don't forget about their wine as well. Very delicious things that they have for you to taste and sample while you're there at Dry Comal Creek. And as always, make sure check out their website before you go. You'll want to get the information there before your visit. It's www.drycomalcreekvineyards.com. And there you're going to find more information about their story, maybe some more details there. You'll find information about their wine club and what you can do to join that wine club. You'll find their event calendar. You can read up about the different wines that they have before you go. You can even order wines there on the website and have them shipped directly to you to be able to taste before you go if you'd like to. And don't forget, when you go, make sure you tell them you heard about them on this podcast, Texas Under Vine. All right. After the interview was wrapped up, it was time to be able to sample and taste some of these great wines that I've been looking at on the shelf during the interview. I was really excited and anxious to do that. And I've got to say, those wines did not disappoint. They did have such a great variety of wines there. I had actually already gotten to taste their sparkling rosé wine and already knew that I liked that one. So I was really excited for what some of these others might bring to my palate. And again, very great wines. They had lots of flavor, lots of variety for almost any palate that you bring there to Dry Comal Creek. They're going to have something for you. And I found many things that I liked. As a matter of fact, came down to that point, you know what I'm talking about. I have to pick my library episode bottle. And this winery for sure had me torn. I had maybe 3 different wines that I kept going back and forth between because I loved all of them and I couldn't make a decision. But I had to really pull my pants up here be an adult and say, okay, I got to make a decision. So what did I choose? Well, I actually chose something that's a little different than the things I normally choose when I pick a wine. And as listeners and avid watchers of my podcast might know, I typically lean more towards those big, bold reds. But this time, I chose the 2023 Riesling. So this is actually a beautiful white wine that I was able to taste and enjoy there. And it's from the Texas High Plains for the fruit. And it was really, really nice. It had a really smooth palate that flavors of honey and peach with almost like some citrus in there as well. It would make an incredible pairing wine. Riesling pairs with a lot of different foods. Just a little hint and tip for you out there for wine pairing. But Riesling really does pair with a lot of things. But this would make such a great sipper on a warm Texas afternoon. A little cold glass of this Riesling would really go down very easily. So that became my library bottle for episode 58 of this podcast. And their staff, Sheila was right. We had such a great time as we did our tasting, bantering and talking about wine and the wine industry and things. They are a great staff on site. They're going to really take care of you during your tasting while you're there, I'm sure. All right, well, it's come that time for me to bring things to a close. However, before I go, would you be willing to do me a quick favor? It's free to you and it only takes a few seconds. But one of the things that really helps this podcast to get to be seen by other listeners, I know there's a lot more people out there that would really benefit from learning about the Texas wine industry. It would really help the wine industry as a whole, and they would love to come visit new places. They just don't know about them and they haven't heard about the podcast. So share the podcast with your friends, people that might be interested in checking out some of our Texas wine scene. But also, if you could go to wherever you get this podcast, whatever provider, whether that's audio or if you're watching on video on YouTube, and leave me a rating and review. So if you leave those ratings and reviews, it does help me move up in the algorithm just to kind of be seen by other people that might want to know about Texas wine. And it's been a few months really since I've gotten some ratings and reviews, and I'd like to see a few more of those come in. I'm not the kind of podcaster that tells you what type of review to leave me or how many stars. That's up to you, whether you like the content. But I would appreciate at least some honest feedback, and some of that rating and review only takes, again, a few seconds. It's free for you and it benefits the podcast. So I would really appreciate it if you could do that for me. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you've been to Dry Comal Creek Vineyards before, leave a comment down below. Tell me what was your favorite thing about Dry Comal Creek Vineyards when you went, or if you have not gone, but now you're excited to after watching this episode, make sure to leave me a comment that tells me what are you most looking forward to seeing when you go. And with that, my time is up. So don't forget, subscribe to the podcast and follow my socials to be notified anytime a new episode is released. And until then, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all.
Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly.
Howdy, Vine Trippers. Before we go, I wanted to direct you to my website, www.texasundervine, because there you're going to find a whole host of things. Besides access to the audio versions and the video versions of the podcast, you can also get those on any podcast provider, and then the video on YouTube. But there you're going to find a couple of things. Did you know that I actually sold some Texas Under Vine merchandise? I only have a handful of items available, about 5 different things, but they are up on my store. So if you go to the website, texasundervine.com, and go to the top, you're going to see a link for the merchandise store, and there you can get your own Texas Under Vine swag to proudly show all of your friends that you support the Texas wine industry, and you can get them started on and hooked on the podcast as well, so they can go visit even more of these great wine destinations. But in addition to the store, I also have a Patreon for my subscribers, people that support this show. I do this all out of a work of love from my heart. I do not make any money on this podcast. I'm actually in the red because I support it all out of my own pocket as a teacher. And it's mainly because I love wine and I love the Texas wine industry. So if you're willing to help me do that and you'd like to see more of these great episodes, hear more from these amazing winemakers, learn more about some fun destinations for you to go and visit on your own, I would appreciate if you would be willing to subscribe to my Patreon. So at the top of my website page, again, you'll find a Become a Patron link. And there you can get all the information about becoming a subscriber to the podcast here as a Patreon subscriber. It only costs a few dollars a month if you're willing to commit that. And there are various levels that you can commit to that each give you behind the scenes benefits that you don't get. And I do have some new things in the pipeline coming down soon. So you want to get on that sooner than later. But right now you can get things like behind the scenes photos at different wineries. You can get things like at one level, you'll get a video walkthrough of the winery. So for every episode, I will post a video walkthrough of me taking you through the winery itself so you can see what it's like before you go. And then at one level, you can even find out before everyone else where I'm headed the next week on the show as it comes out. So you'll know before everyone else. You get a sneak peek. So there's just different levels of benefits, and they all cost a different amount. And as you subscribe, you become the heart of this podcast. You really are what helps me succeed. You are my community and my people. And thank you so much for those that do subscribe. So if you're interested in joining Patreon, check the Become a Patron link at the top of the website. So again, the website is www.texasundervine.com. You can also go to all of my socials. I'm at Texas Under Vine on almost all the social accounts. And check it out and consider sponsoring the podcast and maybe even buying some of that really cool swag on the merchandise store. Happy trails and bottoms up, fine trippers.